Today I'm drawing Gear 5 Luffy from One Piece. Gear 5 is one of the most fun anime forms to draw because it's full of personality, movement, and exaggerated expressions. Just a little segue, but just to explain real quick. So I I am not caught up with One Piece. I have not watched very much of it at all. So I shouldn't have even said caught up because it makes it sound as if like I've even watched an entire season. I have not. I watched very early episodes when I was actually a kid. So I was born in 1993, and what happens is um, on days I had off from school when I was in elementary school, I remember trying to watch like morning cartoons. It was usually morning cartoons. I don't think it was maybe it could have been mixing with Saturday morning cartoons, but that was one of those animes that it was in Shonen Jump. I remember that comic book because I had a friend who had I had a friend who I think it was Vietnamese, and he actually had mangas that weren't even available in America, and he actually had them from family, and he had English versions. And I remember reading Shonen. He had a Shonen Jump comic book, and I remember reading that and reading One Piece. And it was like many chapters in, so I didn't even know what was going on. But I just knew I was reading chapters of that, seeing what Luffy's personality was from that as well. So I actually have awareness of what his personality is, and I'll get into that as well. Like why I'm using the word personality. Referred to this in some videos so far, and especially the videos in this series, right? And then what happens is I also seen some of the show and seen what his personality was like on the show. And I didn't really spend a lot of time watching that show, but I remember as a kid in elementary school seeing how he is, seeing he's very energetic and optimistic and very actiony. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Naruto with his optimism, where no matter what he has going up against him, he puts on a smile and then continues forward, right? And he continues forward to win. And maybe he has his morality of how he's gonna move as well. Like he tries to be fair and square, and he wants to be the strongest and whatever. And so I'm aware of those things in his personality. And one thing about One Piece is that the characters of One Piece, uh, when I see their faces, and maybe if I watch more of the show, I could maybe have a better explanation or awareness of this at all. But I don't really see much emotion in their faces, and that's fine because that's the way their anatomy is. I see their emotion way more in their actions and what they're saying, and maybe what their personality is, and how they handle things, and what the character literally would choose to do, or how they choose to handle a scenario. That's where I see more of their personality. Their facial structure does not show much personality. They have more of I forget the word. Their faces don't have way too much expression to work with. As you can see here, his face is more smaller. I know he smiles. I know he has his eye structure. The eyebrows can move a bit, but one thing I noticed in that series, like I keep saying, it's more like they have a smiley face type of face. But what happens is you see the characters do have a lot of personality and all that stuff, but that's more shown in their actions or what they're saying or what they're doing. Like as I said, right? So I'm aware that Luffy's personality is actually not just because it looks like a smiley face. No, he's actually optimistic, and he's very energetic, likes action, all that stuff. So because I've seen episodes growing up and seen how that he acts like that, and I've even very much glossed over watched episodes, not even to make this video here. Um, During the beginning of COVID, I was skimming through animes, and I've watched a few, barely watched parts of episodes of One Piece, just scrolling through animes in free time, right, between stuff. Might have watched part of an episode, then was scrolling through the menu of related videos and clicked on some other anime that I wanted to watch. But I'm aware of the personality. What I was saying in a prior video, and what these are topics I'll bring up, especially if I can maybe talk about a specific character and talk about things to pay attention to, because it can like help you draw the character better. I was talking about how what happens is, for example, I was aware that a character had a specific personality trait, and I was talking about how I, if because I'm aware that they have that personality trait, when I'm drawing the character, I can deliberately do specific things to bring that type of personality trait out in the actual picture I'm drawing. And there's very distinct things I can do that, and then there's very, maybe not so distinct things I can do that. So, for example, I can do that with Luffy's pose. His face, I'm using a reference. His face was a smile. Just because he's smiling doesn't mean it might not exactly betray everything that you need to know about what his exact persona or charisma was at that very moment. But the pose does that more, or whatever. The pose that he has here, right? He's like running and jumping. That's very much a him thing to do, and it looks like he's like celebrating it by drew the hands or whatever, right? Or he's probably saying hoorah, or he's probably saying let's go guys, as he runs and jumps off like not a cliff, but he jumps off a hill and goes running out into the landscape, and he's leading his army of pirates to follow him to their next adventure. Like that's a very stereotypical thing he would do. And then how could I portray that in the photo? Mostly in the body language. I recently drew Sukuna, and I was talking about in that video specifically, I understood the exact mood and personality he had and why I structured his face. So I was saying that Sukuna in that video, in that recent sketch, he had more of an arrogant persona. And that's actually what Sukuna's persona is in that show. The thing that possessed him, at least from what I remember, that they have that specific persona. They're very, very much like that. And they have a reason to be like that. But because I'm aware that they're like that, and I've watched a show and seen even why that they're like that, I can portray that on purpose in the photo. So if you're using a reference and you're aware of that stuff, you can understand how to just knowing it can help you actually do a better job portraying it if you know how to portray it. So for example, understanding like, a curve at the end of the mouth, or the way the eye structure is, or the way the eyebrows are structured, or maybe creases in the face because of a dimple, or a brow line, or these little things can help you if you understand that would help bring out that in the character more, or if you understand that having the character pose a specific way, from their structure and their anatomy all the way out into their body, and the way their clothing is resting on, if you understand that those things would help bring out that vibe and that personality and charisma more, you can actually draw a viral photo much easier. Because what happens is the people who watch that show and they see your fan art of it, or they see your art, and you're improving as well, they're seeing the art and they feel like they can relate to the art more, because they're not just seeing a well-drawn photo, they're seeing that they can relate to understanding exactly why that character was drawn that way, and they'll even like it more because they're able to relate to it more. They watch the anime and they're seeing the anime drawn in such a manner that maybe they really like that character, and they like that the character is being portrayed that way. Maybe it's literally iconic. I was also talking about like, for example, when I drew Naruto looking up, this is a thing I'm repeating from a prior video, was drawing Naruto looking up, and I was saying, if you watch Naruto and seen everything he went through and everything he had to overcome, and how he was an underdog and he had a major goal and he had everything against him, but he actually went through everything he had to do to achieve it, and he actually succeeded at everything he was trying to do. then that makes the pose way more iconic. And then you know his personality, you know that he had to grow as a person and all that stuff. So literally, the photo of him looking up, and and you, if you understand how to make that look inspirational, maybe from the facial structure, maybe from the body structure, maybe from the scenery around it, you can come out with a viral photo much easier, because people will see that and actually be like, oh, that's dope that you portrayed him like that, because that you portraying him like that literally tells his entire story in a few seconds to someone who actually knows the story, right? So that's the whole point that I kept bringing that up and expanding on that, because it's actually good and very helpful to know. So here, let me just get back to where I was. Um, I did lose my space here, so excuse me on that. And when I'm reading, from where I start reading again, I'm not gonna be caught up to where it is in the video, so I'll just have to um, catch up where I can and expand where I can. Right? If I'm looking at the video as I'm reading and I see anything I should speak on, I'll do that. All right. So okay. Before I draw any details, I try to understand the overall gesture. Gear 5 works best when the pose feels energetic and almost cartoon-like. Right now, I'm laying the basic construction lines. These aren't meant to look pretty. They're just a roadmap for the final drawing, aka the skeleton, and before building everything all the way over it. Right now, I'm laying the okay. One thing that makes Gear 5 unique is how expressive everything is. The face, the hair, the clothing, and even the effects all contribute to the character's energy. I'm starting with the head because the expression is the focal point of this piece. When drawing anime characters, I usually try to get the face established early. If the face isn't working, it's easier to um, fix before too much time is invested. AKA, I talk about starting with the ear and then building out slowly from there. That's just something I do. Now I'm building the hair and cloud like effects around the head, or the cloud hair, right? These shapes are important because they help create the recognizable Gear 5 silhouette. As I move into the torso, I'm thinking about the flow of the entire drawing. I want the viewer's eye to naturally move from one area to the next. The jacket and clothing folds are coming in now. Clothing can add a lot of motion when it's used correctly. One thing I've noticed while practicing is that the drawing folds get, um, um, I, I should say, get easier once you understand the direction of the body's movement. At this point, I'm refining proportions and correcting anything that feels off. This stage often takes longer than people expect because small adjustments can completely change the final result. Now I'm strengthening the facial features. Gear 5 expression is exaggerated, but they still need structure underneath. I'm adding more detail to the effects and surrounding shapes. These effects help reinforce the larger than life feeling of the transformation. One challenge that with Gear 5 is balancing chaos and readability. The design is intentionally wild, but the drawing still needs to be clear. As the sketch develops, I'm focusing on line weight. Thicker lines help bring attention to important areas. Something I've learned from from repeatedly drawing anime characters is that consistency comes from mileage. Every sketch builds every sketch builds experience. That's why I keep working through different characters rather than drawing the same thing over and over. Now I'm entering the final cleanup stage. I'm removing unnecessary lines and strengthening the parts I want viewers to notice first. The expression is probably my favorite part of the drawing because it captures a lot of Gear 5's personality. Looking at the finished piece, I think the energy and silhouette came out well. If I were to redraw it, I'd probably push the perspective and exaggeration even further. One thing, one of the great things about art, every completed drawing shows you exactly what to improve next. Thank you for watching this Gear 5 Luffy sketch. Let me know which anime character you'd like me to draw next, and I'll see you in the next video.